Matt's book is called A Snowball's Chance, and it's really different from any book you've ever read. So tell us, why is it so different?
First of all, thank you, Marianne. Good morning. And any Philly fans in the crowd? Thank you so much for not booing me or pelting me with bagels and lox. I really appreciate that. The book is trying to both defend and even celebrate one of the oft-maligned creatures on planet Earth, the Philadelphia sports fan. And I'd written 4 books in my own name previously. I'm just a piece of the puzzle. I had done some writing for a website called Philly2Philly.com, straight sports articles, some satiric sports interviews, some of the big names in town, Cliff Lee, Roy Halladay, Donovan McNabb at the time, Antonio Bastardo, all the superstars, and made up these fake interviews. And I combined with these guys, and they had an idea. We want to fire back at the national media who just skewers Philly fans every chance they get. Like there's a template for any incident that involves unrest on the part of Philly fans. And of course, we give the national and outside media some chances to do that. So this was our chance to tell our story, that we're not all brutes. We don't have annual pagan rituals where we see Santa Claus walking down the street and just start pelting him with snowballs and ice balls and worse. And that was our contribution. We took a roundtable approach and also enlisted famous Philly athletes, Larry Boa, Vince Papale, Aaron McKee, from all the teams, and all the broadcasters of the local teams, past and present, all to let our voice be heard.
So how did you decide who writes what stories you're going to highlight, what celebrities you're going to bring in? How does that happen?
Great question. Being the first collaboration, first of all, out of the group, and I want to mention the other authors, Joe Valley and Dennis Becke, who had launched Philly2Philly.com. Also Billy Vargas, you may know as Billy V from longtime Fox 29, and Ryan Downs. So yeah, we came together in person, we brainstormed topics like Philly fans have no class. Don't forget, they're the ones who booed and pelted Santa Claus. Philly is a tough place to play. We kill our own superstars. There's a lot of violence, even at our championship parades, however few there are. So we brainstormed about 25 topics and whittled them down to about 11. I enjoy the humorous side of sports as well as the meat and potatoes and bagels and lox of sports. So I wrote the satiric. One of the conceits of the book was that there was a national sports editor who gives tips on how to hate Philadelphia sports fans. And every chapter starts with that satiric approach, and then we offer our retort. So we just kind of narrowed down the topics from about 25 to 11, and then just sort of decided who would take the approach.
Okay, so talk about the snowball and Santa.
Okay. How many of you remember where you were on December 15th, 1968? Do you know what happened on that date? Maybe given Marianne's question. But that was the date where Philadelphia fans became even more notorious for booing Santa Claus at halftime and pelting him with snowballs. Now, in our defense, should there be one, and maybe this will go over with the Jewish crowd, pelting Santa Claus may not be so bad. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Here's the story of that season. The Eagles started the year 0-11. A terrible coach named Joe Kuharich. Anyone remember him? One of the infamous names in Philly sports history. Started the year 0-11. We talk about how the Sixers should be possibly tanking right now, which I don't agree with. But this was the year O.J. Simpson, you should pardon the expression, we only knew he was one of the greatest football players ever, was coming out in the draft. And we were 0-11. It was a 14-game season. We should have just lost our last 3 games, gotten the first pick. Of course, the Eagles decide to win their next 2 games. We're out of the O.J. Simpson sweepstakes. Cold, miserable, snowy day. They don't clean the snow. A guy named Frank Olivo is dressed in his Santa suit at halftime, a skinny 18-year-old kid. Someone from the Eagles PR department approaches him. Oh, Santa Claus got detained in the blizzard coming from the shore on a float from Zaber's. Anyone remember Zaber's? Would you like to come out at halftime? Oh, sure, he said. He kind of regretted it, but he laughed off the incident. It really wasn't violent. It was more tongue-in-cheek. Now, it's easy to be tongue-in-cheek when you don't feel the snowballs at your face, but he's still a diehard Philly sports fan. We quote him in the book. Howard Cosell got a hold of the incident. Remember when he used to do the highlights on Monday Night Football? And this got out there, and it just fit into the pattern of Philly just getting killed. 45 years later, who's read a story that talks about us? You know, aren't we the same fans that booed and pelted Santa Claus with snowballs? Whatever we do, it comes back to that incident.
So what do you think how should they see the Philly sports fan? How do you see the Philly sports fan? And how do you think the nation should?
Great question. I see the Phillies, I think we're more complicated than what's portrayed. We're knowledgeable. We're passionate. We're heathenous and barbaric. Somehow it's all a very fun mix. I think part of it is we have, honestly, a little bit of an inferiority complex, truth be told, and I'm very much a Philly sports fan. We're overshadowed by the New York press. We're not far from the nation's capital, and we are going to beat the Redskins this afternoon. A little grandstanding. But I think we're also much more sentimental than what's given credit for. We still worship Dick Vermeil's team that lost in the Super Bowl to the Raiders in 1981 because, you know, we want our athletes to match the passion of the city. And we get on players that don't seem to care for who, for what, and whatever the motto might be. We want to be loved in return. Sometimes we've been tough on our own superstars who we felt were too nonchalant. Maybe Mike Schmidt, and in a more recent realm, Donovan McNabb, like him or not. But I was a fan throughout. So I think we really want to be loved. We're hard-driven. I think the stereotype about blue-collar sports fans does hold true. But we don't just go there just to feast on our own team. I think it just matters to us a little bit more than in other cities. So all that is sometimes a volatile mix.
So is there ever a time where the Philly sports fans did something that you couldn't really defend?
Yes, very much so. But who remembers Judge Seamus McCaffrey? And for those that don't know, in the old Veterans Stadium, there was a court sitting in the bowels of the stadium, excuse that expression if you just ate, and for offenders, I mean, there was a courtroom in Veterans Stadium. We can't really defend that. We have a couple interludes in the book called You've Got to Give Us This, as far as our support of the team, how we celebrated the Phillies at the Phillies game right after 9/11, and the fans really came through. USA, USA helped to bring baseball back. There are a lot of things that we've done that are praiseworthy, but a fan firing a bottle rocket at a Monday Night Football game against the 49ers, not so praiseworthy. Having a court necessary in the stadium, not so menschy. There's just a lot of, and there are other things. The Winter Carnival incident where an honorable veteran, Purple Heart, Winter, who was a Rangers fan, went to the stadium with a friend. They went over to Geno Steaks after the game, and the guy got beaten almost to a pulp. That's disgusting. There are things that we cannot defend. But on the other hand, unfortunately, a lot of these things happen all over the country, but the incidents just seem to have more legs when it comes to Philly fans.
I'm going to have you end that piece on a happy note. Talk about when Andy Reid came back after his son had died.
Yeah, great question. Andy Reid, is he still coaching in the league this year? I think their teams won a game or two maybe, but Andy Reid, there was a little bit of Andy Reid fatigue, as there was Donovan McNabb fatigue. Can everyone relate? But when after his son died, and then he came back to the stadium to coach in the preseason game, I mean, the fans just welcomed him. And you saw the other side of the Philly fans, the sentimental outpouring of love. He was one of us. Andy Reid, not given to displaying emotion, times years, really was overwhelmed by the response that he got from the fans. And that's the other side of us. We are sentimental. We wear our heart and our attitudes on our sleeves, but that was a very good fan moment.
You talked about Mike Schmidt. You write extensively, about him in your section, and there's so much information that you give. So one, tell us what you think of him, but also two, how much research did you do, or do you just know all this in your sports brain?
Thanks for accusing me of having a brain, sports brain or otherwise. Yeah, Mike Schmidt. How many remember the career of the greatest Philly and the greatest third baseman in Major League history? Mike Schmidt had, how would you describe, very complicated relationship with the fans. And I took on as one of the 11 chapters in the book the notion that Philly fans mistreat our own superstars. I think to some extent it is true when it came to Mike Schmidt. In terms of research, all of us tried to back up everything with research, but a lot of it, you can't really fake being a fan. You can't really write about an incident with passion if you just, take a snippet from Wikipedia or Google or wherever it might be. So a lot of us lived through the Mike Schmidt era, and he wasn't always embraced by Philadelphia fans. He was Joe Cool. It came too easily for him. He talked about, do you remember his quote about the agony of, the thrill of victory and the agony of reading about it the next day in the Philadelphia sports section? I mean, that all describes us. So I think there was a bit of a disconnect from Mike Schmidt. And a lot of fans that said, yeah, he had 548 home runs, but none of them were ever in the clutch. I think that's almost mathematically impossible. But with Mike Schmidt, it took him wearing a wig. Do you remember he borrowed one of Larry Anderson's wigs? And we talk about that. After he made comments in a Montreal paper, it got splashed everywhere. And he went incognito, not Richie Incognito, to the stadium the next day. So I think with Schmidt, we didn't really see the passion till the end of his career. His retirement announcement, where he was in tears in a locker room in San Diego wearing a worse tie than this. A horrible way to end the career. So I think in general, what I came to on that chapter, Marianne, I think we did miss the boat a little bit on Schmitty. He missed the boat a little bit on us by not showing his heart. But if you talk about other superstars, the fans were good. Allen Iverson, the fans loved. Charles Barkley, Eric Lindros, whoever you want to name. Maybe a little disconnect on McNabb. But by and large, I found anecdotally that we do support our superstars as well.
You keep mentioning McNabb. What do you think of him?
It's been harder to like McNabb since he left town because of some of the comments he made, and he didn't exactly shine as a Redskin or a Viking. I really like McNabb. Are there any other McNabb fans in the house? Please don't pelt me. I understand the other side of the argument. I thought he performed fantastically well. By and large, carried himself very well, too. It's not easy being the starting quarterback in this town and getting so close to the Super Bowl. We made it to one, of course, 4 other NFC championship games, but not getting there. That was the curse of Reed and McNabb. The best era of football in 52 years, but we didn't win the top prize. So McNabb, partly because of his comments, partly because he didn't throw bouquets to the fan. He didn't show that he loved the fans, and he was sometimes critical. But I thought that we were tough on him beyond the proportion to which he deserved.
Do you think sports fans from other states will read this book?
Some have. One of the goals in the book was to tweak the national media in the process, and I know we haven't heard this book yet discussed on First and 10 or any of the ESPN shows. I know some people from outside cities who really don't like us as Philadelphia sports fans, have said that it is by and large a fair representation. It's our story, but we're not just homers who try to sanitize the truth. There are things we're not proud of, but I think we can be proud of being boisterous supporters of our teams. Win or lose, we turn out, and we care, and we do have that sentimental side that, part of me, that we don't like to tell anyone about.
So they say it's fair, but do you think they would then go out and do a negative story? That was unfair.
I think that journalism, for the most part, except in SJ Magazine,
Of course. Thank you.
can be very lazy. You hear the sports talk guys all day just talking the Philadelphia point of view without any nuance, without any subtext. And I think for the national media, when Philly fans act up, the story's already half written. Just put in Santa Claus at the end, you know, drop in another infamous quote, maybe the Mike Schmidt quote about how the media kills all the athletes in this town, and then just plug in the details. It's already there. So I don't know if we're going to change any opinions, but I hope that Philly fans will support the book, share it in Jewish style from generation to generation, Lador Vador, and have a good time with it, because I think it tells an interesting story. The outside media will probably always hit us pretty hard, though. That's just the nature of being a Philadelphian.
It's wonderful. Thank you. It's a great book. I hope everyone
Thanks,
gets
Marianne.
it. Thank you.